Hi folks, here's a latest video from the Trimaran rescue project here. Over the course of the past year I've been reading various articles about the less well publicized issues with epoxy in the past and present, and some very reputable people in the marine field, I should say, in the boat building field, have expressed legitimate concerns about this. Larry Party in particular wrote an entire appendix addressing this issue and the many issues that he personally experienced with epoxy. So for the purpose of respecting its limitations and realizing that it has them, and it's not a miracle adhesive by any stretch of the imagination. Just about every adhesive out there has some form of shortcoming or another. With resorcinol, it's lack of gap-filling properties. The pieces have to be very carefully fit and clamped together under significant amounts of pressure to get a good bond. But it does withstand the deep cycling, the expansion and contraction of numerous wetting and dry out cycles, to the point that it is really well respected as a wood adhesive for traditionally constructed boats. And it's important to be aware of this and the inferiority of epoxy as an adhesive for wood that is going to get wet. I regret to say that I've seen several other videos of wooden boat builders. I say that with a apprehensive and reluctant amount of respect. Sadly, these guys advocate the use of epoxy for traditional construction, for glue joints, for strip planking, for traditional planking, and I really wish I could agree with that, but the truth speaks for itself, and here's a perfectly good example of that. Right now I'm sitting back in the stern castle in or aft cabin, depending on which designer you talk to, of this boat, and you can see I ripped out the transom. It was wasted away due to an insidious leak up here in the deck where someone tried to bond epoxy to a piece of PVC, and that's really difficult. Even with the proper measures of surface preparation, it's iffy at best. So water came in, migrated down to a non-inspectable closed-in void down near the bottom of the hull, and the bilge was constantly filling. If I would leave this boat for 2 weeks, come back, this entire bilge would be full. It would have 20, 30, 40 gallons of water in it. And this happened numerous times over a period of several months while I was here in Japan, and I could not find a place that would haul me out. In that time, the wood back here got wet and dried out, got wet and dried out, and got wet and dried out. I was constantly emptying this bilge thinking I was doing a great thing, when in fact I probably was not doing something that great. All the while that was happening, the sides of the boat down in the bilge area were getting wet. The core material, the plywood, was expanding and contracting, expanding and contracting. This cycling causes a separation between the epoxy adhesive on the surface and the wood, and this is really dangerous, guys and gals, because in these boats, some of the critical structural areas are bonded to the plywood with fillets and glass tabbing. Ordinarily heavyweight biaxial tabbing. It's great as long as the core material is kept dry, and or if it gets wet, it only gets wet once or maybe twice and then gets dried out pretty expeditiously. Right down here at this bulkhead is some very, very large glass tabbing, or I should say sheathing, that was put in before the bulkhead was installed, possibly to distribute the load out across a larger area. Again, this is not my area of expertise. I'm just a witness to all this. But here, down here, this is a bulkhead, stringers, and this is the hull side where I've taken the piece out. And this is heavyweight biaxial glass that was bonded in here with epoxy. And due to the deep cycling of the wet and dry expansion and contraction of the wood, the epoxy has completely let go on the surface here. Now that is due to either the cycling of the wood and the difference in expansion and contraction of the glass and the wood. There may have been a seal coat of epoxy applied to this that had a little bit of blush on it that compromised the initial bond between the wood and the glass, but I doubt it. If you have a boat like this, and you have areas that have been wet repeatedly, you might want to get underneath that glass with a chisel. Just pick at it a little bit. If you find an area that pries up under hand strength that is in a critical structural area, tear it out. Dry it out. Go over that plywood with a 20 grit abrasive disc on a grinder. Rough up those wood cells and wet it out really well, and put in some new glass. If any of you are dealing with an old multi-hull, they can be great. There are a few things to look out for. I'll continue to document these things as they go along. Hope all goes well on your multi-hull adventures. Cheers.